Welcome back, sports fans. I'm excited, but I'm also sad. It is the last round of the World Cup series that we're going to break down. This is your Crank Brothers Race Review series. They are synonymous with downhill racing, and this year celebrated 14 years in a row of that elite world champs win on that Mallet DH pedal. They wrapped up the overall title with a round to go with Valley Hall and Luke Bruni in the pedals. Man, we've been saying it all year. If you want a pedal that's going to work in those sort of conditions, it's the Crank brothers. Riders like Ronan Dunn, Lucas Shaw, and Cammy Belange, Troy Brosnan, they're all in the shoes as well. So I have Sven Martin, who was on the ground in what looked like a pretty nice setting until the rain came in. Sven, you must be exhausted, off a plane, but loyal as ever on the podcast. What's up?
Yeah, literally landed like 3 hours ago, back in Italy, and I'm just pulling up some notes here. Um, yeah, I don't know what time zone. It should be middle of the night, Sunday night, back in Canada. Um, yeah, man, just showing up to Mont-Saint-Anne that's the one World Cup venue I've been to most because as a as an early racer, it's was the closest one for us being based in North America to get to. So that was that venue. Besides photographing it, I've been there since 2002, I think. So maybe missed two or three. I think it's a 97. Anyway, um, and showing up this year straight away, every year when you go to these repeat venues, Leogang, Fort William, Mont-Saint-Anne, and Lenzerheide, and some of the ones that have been around for longer times, you kind of get jaded and you kind of like, oh, it was better that year, it was better this year, or I remember when it was like that. And especially this venue, there's so much potential at the top. And last year and the year before, they did open new, fresh loam sections, which was great. But there was always that from the start, out the start gate, all the way to the first woods, where you almost had a nice jump, you almost had a nice shark fin. I'm talking kind of from a photographer's standpoint as well here. And it was just rough and bony, and there were some traverses that were a bit flat and slow. And this time, right out the gate, it was started a little bit more direct into the first straightaway, so you missed the first traverse. Um, all of this is actually in aid of getting the run times, from a plus 4 minute run to like a three. At Mont-Saint-Anne, you're not going to be able to do it, and I doubt at Fort William as well. But they probably cut, like, if it had been dry, they probably would have cut 40 seconds off the run times from 2 years ago, um, which is getting it closer to like the 3 minute mark, which makes it better for TV. But that's another topic about cutting courses short. But basically, big crew of really good trail builders, and you saw them all week long on the side of the track. And they're the kind of people like me and you. They're Vela Solutions crew, and they are a modern track building crew. Sometimes you go to these venues in the Alps, and it's just like people that live there that also work on the tracks. These guys ride their bikes just like me and you want to ride our bikes, and like they races themselves, and they just built the perfect track. So it was like real excitement for everyone. And practice was like people were doing probably more laps than normal. The track was running faster. I wouldn't say smoother because the holes will come out at the speeds, but definitely faster, less technical. But obviously, it's still a fast Mont-Saint-Anne, so those things bite you. A lot of the big crashes were just little people being like bitten or bucked. It wasn't because it was like caught on a tricky section. And then obviously the slips when it got wet.
Yeah, I saw that they moved the start there, but I kind of agree that, yeah, the byproduct of moving the start is they actually, if they can lose time on like a nothing section, that is a positive,
Exactly.
right? We're not
Yeah,
like
you didn't.
condoning cutting it down to 3 minutes because, that's a big debate. And we just want exciting racing. And I don't think exciting racing is always if you win by a tenth.
Yeah,
Exciting racing can be if you wallop the field by 3 seconds on a 4 minute
sure.
track. Like, I think that is a
Exactly.
story, like stories sell the race.
Yeah.
And we had so many storylines coming in, but track is always one of them. Conditions, like another World Cup where we have these varying conditions where we could debate who had the best conditions over who
No,
didn't. There
yeah.
were some drier runs for sure in the men. Then there were
Yeah.
some pretty treacherous, slippery conditions. Then there was someone like Lockie and Benoit that were just riding just unbelievable in those conditions where you thought, oh, we've lost the track. But the cool thing about Mont-Saint-Anne, we've had those famous wins by Gwyn, the late Stevie
in
Smith.
those
Like, we don't
conditions.
lose the track if someone is confident and on pace. Like, you don't lose the track to conditions almost, which
No.
is, I guess, testament to the track as well as the skill and confidence at that time with a rider.
Yeah. I mean, race day was a completely different ball game to the 2 days before. It was like perfect fall weather, the lovely trees and leaves and good grip in the soil. But then race day was like the early practice that the juniors did. So although they definitely had a faster race course, you saw Max Ellerin had the fastest time of the day overall, but not much faster because it was slipperier in a different way. Because there's a lot of hard packed dirt, even if it's not raining or misting heavy, or it was wet enough from the night before that it was hell of a slippery. And then the rocks are staying slippery. They're underneath these thick trees that are not drying out, especially at this time of the year with the lack of sunlight we're getting in the days. So, like that first morning training, we went up to the rocks, the infamous rock garden. That's where I started my day, and just seeing how much slippery it was for everyone, and even in the juniors race, it didn't have the vision issues and the little bit more wet and maybe slower rolling conditions, but it was just as difficult in their conditions, as well as for the first few elite men, that maybe for the first 5 minutes was a little bit I would say easier. I would say easier on vision, like someone like Finn Isles, who when it got like that he would have done fine in those conditions. He was thrown off by vision, and it was also like we spoke about, I don't know if it was last race, about the goggles. And obviously he's had tons of experience, but I know something went wrong with his goggles in terms of being able to see. And it might not have been the actual goggles, because we have this temperature. It happens to the cameras as well. When you start in a certain temperature, whether it's been the warm up or the start hut, and then also there's temperature inversions as you drop down the mountain, and then condensation occurs when you hit dew point. So the goggles were fogging up, and they were getting whiteouts more than moisture between the tear offs or roll offs or everything. So that's something that you can't really plan for. Maybe you vent and equalize the temperatures on the inside and the outside of the goggles better. So I'm sure that's something they'll look into, but. It happens to our cameras sometimes. If you change temperatures at high humidity too quickly, it just fogs up, basically, just like driving a car.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like the viewer saw on the cameras. It looked like fog,
Yeah.
And number one is, if you're riding in fog, it's way harder as a rider to sort of look ahead. And at speed, that's what you're doing. Like, the brain is subconsciously doing all these decisions by looking so far ahead, especially at that speed. Now you got fog, so you can't really do that. So now you may be back to thinking, or like, what's coming up now, and all these things that run into these riders' minds. Like Greg said, it was tough, like the vision, and that was probably okay. So the track conditions did vary a little bit, but I was watching and I thought the fog and vision was probably changing the most between riders. Like, some guys had so much fog at the top.
Yeah.
Then later on, I was like, whoa, the fog's gone. That's going to be an advantage. But then they had the fog later on, lower down. So yeah, and then as you said, with goggles, that's why we go racing. There's all these crazy, unique situations that often only happen when you race. Because at home, if it was odd fog, you maybe wouldn't ride much, or you'd call it a day. Now there's something to think about with your goggles. Do you vent the lens, but then condensation or drops can get inside? So yeah, that's a bummer if that's what took him out.
Yeah,
But I
and like
mean,
I said, sorry, I just heard he had problems with his vision, so
no, I mean,
maybe it's the fog and not the goggles, but yeah,
well,
that's
exactly. It could feel like it's the goggles, but the fog is so gnarly that it's just actual fog. It wasn't that the lens fogged up. It could have. We don't know that.
it.
But I think it's a good topic for the podcast, is
Yeah,
the vision conditions, not from the actual rain, but the fog were seriously playing a role.
yeah, and not this race, and we're already digressing so early on in the podcast, as we tend to
That's
do.
part of it.
But like when they have full mudders, I've seen the Kiwis and the Vanzacks, they cut those little slits. So some people just take the lenses out and they use the goggle strap to look cool and keep the helmets in place, and then they just making the best of it. But the Kiwis would sometimes like just slice a little bit, so you basically got clear vision, and you're minimizing them. The dirt really has to get in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did that in the Enduro
But I
World
mean,
Champs
so
in
storylines.
Kansai.
We had all these storylines. I mean, you start with the first one. We've got so many coming into the round, and then obviously how it
I
ended.
mean,
So where do we
World
start?
Cup. I mean, it's World Cup finals. So the big story is, say, that the two biggest titles, the men's and the women elites, is already sort of sealed the deal, which I would say definitely, after speaking to both Vali and Loic, it definitely, they both came in hungry and wanting to win and wanting to end on a good note. But then when that weather changes, is like, how badly do they want to win or need to win? And the off season's just ahead. Like, do you need to win and
Do,
maybe
do
break
you
your
want to
wrist
sit on the
before
beach?
your
Yeah,
yeah, do you
before
want to sit
sipping
in
cocktails.
Valley said, do I want to sit on the beach with a cast or do I want to be able to swim? And I was like, when you're having those thoughts creeping into your head, yeah, you're not going to race the same. It's
No,
impossible.
it's
But she's kind of,
impossible. It's
and
impossible.
Loic's just flat out disappointed, like not actually, because he did say he backed it off a bit, but he did come into the week wanting to go for it, and especially when it was dry the previous 2 days, he's like, yeah, and you could tell he was definitely one of the quickest guys. But then when he knew he did back it off and he did ride conservative, he also told me he didn't actually have anything go wrong with his run, and he was very surprised and disappointed at his time and his
Yeah, wasn't
position,
he in
because
like 26th or 28th
yeah,
position?
because backing it off, he maybe thought he'd be like sixth or eighth or seventh or 12th, but he ended up 26. So he's like, "Ooh, I've got." So that's one thing he knows. That's his off-season work, and he was obviously this year he's had good wet and rain races, but he knows that's, I wouldn't say it's his Achilles, because he doesn't really have, it's not that big a weakness for him, but he knows that is something he will have to work on.
Yeah, I saw that coming. Is a rider like Loic needs the pressure to sort
Yeah,
of perform, So now he's got to fabricate that pressure. Okay, I don't want to go into the off season getting smoked or whatever. And in the dry, I guess it's pretty realistic. But he is also such a methodical rider that those conditions, you can call them a weakness. If I was him, I would sort of stop talking about it because it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But
he
he's
does
just
talk
like
about it too
such,
much. Yeah,
yeah, he talks about it too much. But I understand why, because he is that a champion mindset is never satisfied. In the post-race interviews, he barely spoke about winning the title. He was like, well, we know what to work on. We've got all these things we're going to work on. I'm scared for the field because now he goes in the off season with this like, okay, I won the title, but I know I want to work on these other things. Like that's quite a good bit of like kick in the arse motivation. Like
yeah.
saying he's going to go fly out to Finn and train there. Like that takes effort and work in the off season when you want to relax after the title. So that'll be interesting to see him next year. It's just, as we both love the psychology, like I'm not surprised those two didn't have like the best finish in those conditions. If it's dry,
Yeah,
I think you could raise your game and ride well. But as you said, if you're mentioning the beach and you're mentioning the off season, one
yeah,
foot in, one foot out the door, it's pretty
exactly,
hard to go
exactly.
up against someone like, if we go like real motivation when someone, now they didn't take it away, but now Troy Brosnan, this is a cool story. So you got the fatherhood one, but you also have being forced to sit at home. It's a magical moment for him. But
I wouldn't say
you
force.
basically,
He
but you know what I
chose
mean?
to. No, yeah, and anyway, there's some
Well,
people that have had a baby and like been at home for a week, and then he
yeah,
missed two races, but luckily it wasn't two World Cups. It was just a World Cup and a World Champs. So
yeah.
that he didn't lose too many points, because riders number 2 and 3 in the world this year both missed the World Cup.
Both missed around.
Him and Amri. So, and that's happened before. Like there was one year, I think it was 2 years ago, where every single rider in the top 5 in the overall missed a round or didn't get a result because like didn't finish the run for a flat or
Yeah,
a
it
crash
often
or.
it often
So
often it
it's
does happen because the points are so skewed to winning and getting on the podiums.
yeah,
Like if you get a win or a podium, you're like almost guaranteed. If you get a win, you're almost guaranteed top 5 if you have a decent season. But anyway, that's like the points topic. But it's like the polar opposite of Loic. It's
yeah,
like caging an animal. He's chosen to stay at home, but he's chomping at the bit to get out there. Yes, the preparation isn't key, but it just shows you like he said, and I've said it about Troy. Later in the season is the biggest challenge for Troy. He's homesick. He's away. All these things, they drain your energy. So now he's gone home. He gets the energy. He's got this euphoria of being a first-time dad. But as we know, that's insane to go perform after having basically no sleep. Like,
yeah.
so going to the race, it's like I tried. I went to Mega. So getting 8 hours of sleep was pretty good. You do feel like a new type of human. So he might have felt like a Superman. And he's just like obviously stoked to be there. He's motivated to go out with a bang. And it shows you, like with an injury, you're probably mentally really doubting yourself and you focus on that coming back. And then Troy's situation is what a fairy tale story, like that memory to tell your little child one day, the first race back. But I
Yeah.
mean, is that what it takes to win a race? Like I should have had a kid 15 years
Well,
ago. Like what am I
well,
doing with my life? If
well,
that's all
like
it takes to win a race.
everyone calls Troy Mr. Consistent, and he's always there. And then even in some of his consistency dipped off recently, and that's definitely been itching at him. Like he doesn't want to hear about that because he's still racing for wins, not racing for consistency. And I could swear that you've already listened to my Troy interview, which I know you haven't, but you hit the nail on the head. And he said it was motivation. He says usually at this time of the season, he doesn't want to be there. He's been out too long. The Aussies, the Kiwis, South Africans, they are away a lot longer than everyone else. The whole season sometimes. And he's kind of over racing, so it's hard to push it. This year, because he went home, besides having a baby, that's one thing, but he actually had a break and he got to be at home, and then he wanted to get between the tape again. So it's and he said that literally was what did it this week. He said he felt recharged, renewed, and he wanted to race. It was, and I didn't think you could jump in after two big races and have the race pace, because that's usually, if you come back from injury, he wasn't injured, so he could still stay active, healthy, strong, and trained. But you lose the pace. You need like another race to get up to pace. And these guys have had, another World Cup, World Champs, US Open, and Troy just was already at pace. So that was surprising. But then if you watch how he rode, this track more, I'd say along the lines with Leger, but sort of Leergang, it's all about carrying speed, right? It's kind of like how the Voulios, Minnaars, Steve Peets of the older eras won the races. They won it by carrying speed, not by doing like Sam Hill stuff or G Atherton stuff. It was like they were really good at carrying speed. And Troy, as we've seen, like he can really milk a track and generate speed. And that's really at Mont-Saint-Anne. You only have to go like 1 kilometer an hour, and on 1 kilometer per hour faster, and then on a 3.5 minute track, that's your margin right there. You don't have to do anything faster in the sections. You don't have to do anything better in the sections. You just have to milk every bit of speed and carry speed. And it's just my point is even hit home even harder because second place rider, he just
Didn't
came
win
from
a split.
USO. He
Didn't win a
just
split.
but he came from US Open. Now, everyone that came from US Open said they had so much fun. They loved the event. Like, no one even talked about the track. But when I asked them about the track, they said, oh, yeah, the track's pretty average. It's super flat, super slow, and hard to carry speed. So there's Lucky, wins US Open by almost 3 seconds because he's like a BMX. He hugs the ground. He can generate speed. He uses the track to get speed. There's not a lot of crazy steep sections of Mont-Saint-Anne where you're on and off your brake, and you let go your brake, you're suddenly up to speed. There's none of that. Only in maybe 2 sections of
I
Mont-Saint-Anne.
guess there used to be, right? Like some of those high speed sections,
Yeah,
some of them are changed to wood sections, and
exactly.
like you say,
And
from the Stevie Smith drop down, it's
but
fast, and
but
then you got to
even
just carry
but
and make
even
speed, right?
but even
And
then,
that's
yeah,
where
even
those
then
guys killed it.
even then, all of those sections you have when you finish the steep section, you only then off your brakes, and then it's already flat. So it doesn't, you don't have the end of the steep section to get your speed straight back up. So you have to carry speed through the exits of all the tech sections. Unlike other sections where you can let go mid-steep section and exit fast and without doing anything, here you have to create the speed. There's lots of little hops, and you could see that with Max Alleran as well. All these little hops and pops. It's a big old wide pump track all the way down. You got all this rock underlying this grass, and I was watching just the rock garden, the exit of the rock garden. So just as you finish that slippery rock slab that some people crashed on, there's a little hump, and it's the same thing with that Minnaar gap in that very next section of woods. It's literally the guys that were going fast. They were just missing the tiniest of downsides. And then I saw in training, Lucky's last run, he pre-hopped this little mound that everyone was going off, and everyone's feeling fast because they're flying off and landing on the flats. but he landed literally a bike length shorter. And I was like, oh, did he go slower? That's why he landed shorter. No, but it's because he hopped from way further back, because he literally got his front wheel and his back wheel on the tiniest of little transitions. And where everyone else landed to flat and carried on rolling, he landed and got a little acceleration. So, you got your suspension set up right, you basically can milk the whole way track. And that's literally why Gwyn won with no chain, because there are those little bits on the track, and you don't need a chain when you get to that segment of the track. It's about generating your own speed, and and that's how the race is won in Mont-Saint-Anne, and Troy's the best of them doing it.
Yeah, no, that's well said. And Lockie, also, I was going to bring up him on, it shows you what confidence can do as well, winning a big event like US Open, plus the style of track. I mean, you're going to want to go hungry into the off season, and for Lucky, the youngster that's had these 2 years of awful injuries and results, knowing but he's so, speaking to him in the press conference in the US Open, like he's funny, he's swearing on your interviews you're going to send me that we're going to listen to later. Like he
great. Will be
he's
swearing, unfortunately.
He's like unfortunately.
Not unfortunately, it's kids. Just You've had Brooke and Eddie. Well, you come up with Kiwis, and you got Brooke, Eddie, Sam Blankensop, Win Masters. Like, you just get to be a fun-loving Kiwi.
In the country. So if there's any parents out there that are sharing this with their kids, just there are some F-bombs later in the episode. We do apologize. But in saying that, he's actually so mature. Like his race, because I asked him, I said, I rode this track at US Open, and tell me, like, how hard did you push? Because to me, there's like a race pace, but if you go a little bit too fast, you make a mistake with this long straight. He's like, exactly. He really was picking and choosing where to be aggressive and where to like slow down to go fast. And that's what Lockie's doing. Like he said, it wasn't the craziest good run. He didn't win a sector, but he was in the hot seat for the whole race. Yeah. But he was just so good at picking, like, this is where I'm going to attack. This is where I'm going to maybe go on this down. So he's quite a methodical rider with a sort of a experienced head on him, which is really amazing to see.
Well, he learned a lot. Basically, he would have been the winner in Poland. He got his podium in Leogang, but he would have. Well, it's easy to say would have, could have, should have, because he didn't. But he was on track to potentially win at the Poland World Cup, and it was just the smallest of mistakes on a terrible section of track that it didn't even count for much. It was like a little awkward turn. So he did exactly like you said, he picks and chooses, and he also doesn't want to throw it away when he is on a good run. He learned
from that one, because that was a place an experienced rider probably wouldn't have crashed.
Yeah, so, exactly.
But he's hungry for a youngster within reason. To be talking about winning races and be like, I was actually bummed. Like, I do want to win a World Cup. To see that you can do it is one thing, but to believe it is another thing, and to say it out loud is an even more of a big thing.
And that's the beauty of what Joe Bowman's done with the Union and all of the whole crew at the Union. I would say any other team would have not re-signed Lockie this year, and definitely they wouldn't have re-signed him this year, and they wouldn't have maybe re-signed him last year. Joe held on to him. This is his third year, I believe, maybe fourth. Even when he had those terrible injuries, like Joe obviously saw something that obviously nobody else saw. I mean, this is how Joe's done the team from the beginning, and he believed in him, and he obviously saw that he had the desire, the skill, and if you read between the lines, that potential was in there. So hats off to Joe for carrying on what he's been doing, and not just with Lockie. There's a whole lot of riders who he's brought up like that before and after Lockie, and with the other juniors and the other riders on his team.
No, huge props to him. Which he'll come on the pod. I think he's like probably a 20th. We thought it was like a 10th of the budget. We actually recalculated it could be a 20th of the budget. I think it's a 20th of like a syndicate or something. But
they say that the dollar per points earned, the rider for
dude,
the dollar spent for points earned.
He's the Bitcoin of
Bitcoin miner.
Modern day downhill. It's amazing. The miner is is Steel City Media, and the coin is Lockie. Like he's on the way up. I'm buying
Well,
Bitcoin.
Lucky, and a few others, and even their staff, they all go over and
No, of
above.
course. But I mean, people don't even know last year or the year before, this kid is sleeping in a tent on the side of Schladming Mountain, like hungry to do laps. Like,
Yeah.
this is a cool story, and I'm sure it's going to take an interesting turn through the off season, or when we start talking team rumors and announcements. And any teams out there, can't you be the first team that signs a rider, lets a rider out of contract at the end of October, and then is happy to sign a rider in on? Or no, so say someone's moving, the current team lets them out early, pays them out, and then there's like a silly season from last race till 1st of December or 1st of November, and then we can see them on testing different bikes.
Well, I mean, if you look
on their new bikes, because now like everyone's
if you
like
pay attention, that's yeah. If you pay attention,
but it's boring because we've got to like, oh, we saw a spy picture. Like, yeah, we know the guys on the team, but they're going to tell us on the 1st of January. I'm like, come on, guys.
It's boring, but
let's make a silly season.
It's boring. Season. Well, it is
great.
It is a silly season. You might say it's boring, but it's what keeps bloody Vital forums and Pink Bike comments.
Pink Bike forums.
It keeps them like busy for the next 3 months. I know where. Actually, I'm not going to say anything.
No, you're not allowed to. I'm also signing documents. I can't say half of what I know as well now.
No, I've learned not to sign any documents. Andrew.
But there are riders that need to be out there testing bikes and doing things like,
and they
should be allowed to get released out of their contract.
And they will be. And then also on the flip side, if you are sort of anyway, that's another whole podcast, and we can. Maybe I'd like to do one. I'd like to guest in when you do something with Joe. I'd like to maybe do that with you.
He's already said he insists that you guest in because he wants to get all the stories, and Sven knows all the stories. Okay, cool. It's lined up. Season pod's definitely coming.
No, but while we're talking about Lucky at a World Cup, and the Union, he wouldn't have been able to race into this year at the World Cups under the proposed current plan for next year, which hasn't been signed off on by the UCI. But from what we saw in those leaked documents, Union is not a top 15 elite team at the beginning of the year, and Lockie was not a top 50 ranked World Cup rider. He literally wouldn't have been able to, unless he had a race in a New Zealand jersey all year long, which means he wouldn't have been able to get sponsors because he can't attract the sponsors, or applied for a wild card, which is also, you're not going to get a season-long wild card. He wouldn't have been able to enter World Cups. And now he's had 2 podiums. Andrew, this is quite worrying. Listen to this. Plus or minus 30 of the 60 riders qualified. So you go look at qualifiers. Out of the 60 riders, there were more than 30 of them that were not in the top 50 and were not on a top 15 elite team. So you're telling me...
In the 60? Yeah.
Yes. Are you telling me that half of the people that qualified should not be at World Cups and aren't going to be able to race World Cups or are not allowed to race World Cups? Does that sound like a system that's fair, going to work, going to be sustainable for the future, or am I just on crack and that's the way it should be?
Why does this sound like a rhetorical question that we know the answer to?
Yeah, okay. Everyone knows the answer to that, but hopefully... why am I the only one that's...
You're not the only one. I think we have to break it down once they're pushed through.
Yeah, but if it's pushed through, it might be too late.
No, I understand that. The conversations are happening at a higher level. I've had a lot of conversations. I don't want to get into the proposed stuff because I think you add fuel to the fire and people get more resistance to feedback.
All right, let's just talk about Mont-Saint-Anne then.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a podcast when it's fact and all that. And I wish I had a chair at one of the tables. I'd happy to have. I got a lot of questions. I don't have all the answers.
I know they definitely.
A lot of strategies, a lot of things I think could be done. I do feel that change is inevitable. It certainly sounds like a lot of things will go through. I was hoping that it would take longer to propose, you could propose them with a deadline that is pushed out further. Yeah. Going from one season to the next season is going to be a big challenge. And if it goes through, what you said is a big worry. I mean, no one can disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, we all agree that there can be, less entrants at the World Cup in the first
Yeah.
place, but but like I said, let's wait. Let's keep this Mont-Saint-Anne related. I want to be happy, not angry, and yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, so then story of
Well, let's
Mont-Saint-Anne, and without
talk.
glossing over, we do have to, because we're going to forget to say, it's also George Brannigan's last race before we get to Greg Minnaar's last race. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
everyone sits in Greg
Well, it might
Minnaar's
be.
shadow.
It might be a lot of people's. He's planned it, but it might be by default more than George's.
George's last UCI race, and Greg as well. I'm pretty sure he'll race the bike down a hill, but it's his last World Cup, so he says. But George Brannigan, I spoke to in US Open. He's had a great career, a very exciting career. I loved Kieran Bennett's post where he shared the run where he fell off at Wyndham about 400 times in one run. And that was George Brannigan. At the end of the day, he was exciting. He did the craziest gaps in Queenstown, like shit that I was like,
he still does.
He still does that. And maybe he lost the motivation for putting like a methodical race run together. But, you have to give credit to people that have made the sport exciting, that have had World Cup podiums, that have won races and just been exciting. And hopefully George puts together. And this is interesting with those, okay, you said we're not allowed to, but with potential proposed changes and a sport evolving, there are other race series like a Hardline, like a Monster Energy Pro Downhill series. And I'm even hearing rumors big names might do selected races. They might, could a Gwyn do selected races? Some World Cups, some Pro Downhill series? I don't know. Maybe.
I think that's what we would see, Gwyn, and
a George Brannigan do, maybe hard lines and some Pro Downhill and a US Open. It's interesting times, isn't it?
Yeah. No, obviously there's cycles and peaks and troughs and stuff, but it was George's first World Cup ever. Mont-Saint-Anne was also my first World Cup ever, so it is a fitting place to make it his last World Cup, and their whole team actually this week we're going really good, looking good on track.
Well, Kai's been quite underrated, I think, for a while. Like, I think Kai's not shown his best yet, to be very honest.
He's still super young and strong and learning,
and then story of the week, Greg finally.
And he qualifies. That's so cool.
Well, I mean, he had to. So speaking of pressure, needing pressure, Greg needs the pressure. I mean, that's a lot. I wonder if you could actually figure out like levels of pressure. Like, you have to qualify. You don't want to crash. Like, that's going to suck going out your last race crashing. Yes, it's not fairy tale and he's not on the podium.
We'll talk about Matt Walker.
Yeah, horrendous conditions. We must speak about Matt Walker. So Greg had a lot of pressure on his shoulders to have some sort of fairy tale ending, because if he came down visor off, covered in mud, I mean, that's a bit of an anticlimax for your.
Well, I mean, if he didn't even qualify, he wouldn't have been riding on Sunday,
which is proper challenging these days. You got to do it twice.
Yeah,
in the current format, you had to do it twice.
Yeah, and if you're not protected, it's anyway. Yeah, he was there and he did his last run with us. Man, like, I think he podiumed at half the races he entered. Like over 80 podiums.
51.49%. I took 167 races because he had 171 results, but he didn't start 4 of them.
Yeah.
So someone might have this even more accurate.
No, I think it was 166 starts. Yeah. This race 167. Yeah.
Yeah, 167 starts, 86 podiums. I have it. If this
did he have 22 or 23 wins? 23 wins. 22. I almost think he's custom.
3 World Cup overalls and 4 World Champs. That is a 51% strike rate on podiums. And if he didn't go so long, the podium strike rate was in the 60s at a point. Until he started stretching the career and all these youngsters started coming up. That's pretty damn impressive to know, like 50 to 60% of the time you're going to be on the podium. It's every second race. You're like, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't be so worried. I'm going to be on the podium anyway.
Yes, I have to check something.
What?
Because you said 22 wins, right?
But I
Just
I haven't
no.
updated after Leger. I do think it's 22. That's what all the stats on the screen said. Although they did misspell his name in the finish area on the screen. Did you see that? That's not ideal. That's not
Yeah.
ideal. I
Things
got
that slip
22
between the
wins,
cracks.
3 World Cup titles, 4 Worlds, 167 starts, and the 86 podiums. There are people like Martin Whiteley, which, if he does listen, can correct us because he has these all way better than I have. But I did do my homework here to try to justice to Craig's incredible career. I give him a lot of shit these days because I can, because I'm old now and he's old and I don't race anymore.
Oh, you know
But
what?
I've got to give
His
credit. I mean, he motivated me more than anyone to get out there. I mean, he's one of the biggest reasons for me having a career is because you could see someone like that from South Africa make it on the world stage, So you need these people to come before you. What stat are you trying
he's
to look up?
he the custom bike they had made for him says 23 wins on it. So let's just pretend it's 23.
But I mean, do you think they got that wrong?
Wait,
But
one
then
of us
UCI got it wrong as well.
either we got it wrong or they got it wrong. We'll have to ask Greg,
Oh
and
God!
he might
Well,
not
I'll
remember
go
one of.
through the results. Yeah,
Anyway,
okay. It's a hell
but
of a lot, and
the
yeah,
best thing about Greg, the adaptability, and he's gone through 3 decades. I mean, he's won world champs in 3 different decades. He's battled like the Nikos, which we appreciate how great he was, but because these kids these days, they don't know how to operate a VCR because those tapes, not everything's been digitized. Like Nico was on such another level, but Greg battled and beat Nico. And in fact, he won his first overall, beating Nico at Mont-Saint-Anne. But he battled Nico, then he battled Steve Pete, then he battled G and them. Then he battled
Aussies,
Sam and them,
and then
and then he
Gwyn,
battled Gwyn, and then he battled Loic, and then he
Loic.
battled Loris, and like he's literally beating and battling kids half his age or kids that could be his kids. 27 years racing and been winning for like 25 of them. It's yeah. There's the the goat gets thrown around so often these days, but you definitely. I mean, I don't think there's one person that will dispute Greg. And also, he has so many fans, and that's another thing about Mont-Saint-Anne. It was probably I'm going to maybe say it was more fans than Leger.
It looked
And
packed, especially like middle of the track, which often
yeah,
isn't that
because
packed. Like, what did
yeah,
they
because
do
usually
to get the fans there?
I
Is
don't
there a
know.
screen up or something?
I don't even think there was a screen. I just think it was such a you can see you can actually probably see more track stood there than if
Yes.
you're in the finish area. And it's just that these are proper mountain bike spectators, and they're like most, I wouldn't say mostly American, but they're like half and half of Canadian and American spectators. And this Northeast is quite very gravity orientated, and especially from the Canadian side, when you've had riders like Steve Smith, Finn, and Jackson, it's definitely made gravity a really important discipline because there's a couple of World Cups in Europe where the cross country pulls a bigger crowd than the downhill, but that's not the case here. And the crowd being so knowledgeable, and so this we're talking about Greg, but the reason I bring in the crowd, you can tell who the crowd favorites are. You just hear the volume go up. They were pretty much cheering for everybody, but obviously when a Canadian came by, it got louder. And then there's a couple of a lot of the French riders because they're French Canadian. But then when someone like a Greg Minnaar comes by, it's just like it's pretty obvious how much he means to so many people and how many people were just showing up with Greg Minnaar like memorabilia and outfits and some guy did some big tag art up there. It's we could have 2 or 3 podcasts just on Greg Minnaar's career, and hopefully over the next couple of times he'll dip in and come visit you and tell us about the early days and the middle years. I just remember when they would drink a bottle of red wine on a Thursday night and still race and win. And these days he doesn't do it, and you can't probably do it. But there was a time, say the Bryson era, when like the syndicate, it was like they were winning and they were winning the party. Yeah, it's just impressive
Well,
to be able to. to be
You
able to
won
be
the
like
bet
that.
there. You won the
What
bet
was my
because
bet?
I said he was going to perform at Mont-Saint-Anne with the pressure
Yeah.
in his last race, and you said no ways. He's on his victory lap. He's going to be drinking too much wine, and I did
Well,
share
so
some
you won
wine
the
with him
bet.
at the. No, I said he would perform very well, like get on the
He
podium
did,
type.
but he did. He
He
did.
didn't get on the podium at St. Anne.
He performed well to get in the fucking final,
Yeah.
bro.
Hey, I'm giving you credit. Like, you just love arguing that you can't even hear that I'm giving you the win on the bet. You said
Okay.
he won't get on the podium, though, because he's going to be on a victory tour drinking red wine. And I did have some red wine with him at the US Open. But he's so competitive. He brought up, listen to this. So he says, hey, Needles, you know that we tied at a race. I said, I literally don't even remember that. He's like, yeah, we got 7th at Wyndham one year, tied to the thousands. I
So
said,
who got
couple
the nod?
things. Yeah, so I said, couple things. I don't remember that. And it's super interesting.
So that would have bothered him.
Time. It bothers him, but he also failed to remember the one where I did beat him at Wyndham when I was 3rd and he was like 11th. So I obviously found that and gave him a little jab. So I looked up the result. And he was right. We were actually 9th and we tied to the thousands and they put 9th on both of our names. I forget
Really?
who was above. I think I was above, and then I chirped. I said, I must have qualified better, so I'm above you. But the reason I bring this up is not about me. It's Greg is so competitive, whether it's like in the bar on teasing someone, or
he's like
he
Lopes.
said to Loic, I still got you. My last race, I was still ahead of you, you know? It's like he's always got to find something, and that's what drives him.
He was.
And
He beat Loic in his last race.
Yeah, so he always gets to say that to Loic, even though they both were in the 20s or whatever.
He's the king of Andorra. He beat Amaury too, technically you could say, in the last race. Yeah, so there we go.
So that's where the drive comes from, and I think exactly we couldn't say enough about him. We all like to give each other a lot of shit. That's how sportsmen, that's how males bond. But I have to thank him. Like, if it wasn't for him, my career wouldn't look at the way it looked. He just showed that like it's possible to get out of a country like South Africa and go race downhill on the world stage. Like, that's such a weird concept to me, you know. Like even to see the next generation and to see Alan Hatherley, like, yes, the late Barry Stander probably motivated him, but even Greg would have motivated these cross country riders.
For sure.
Like, hey, we can
and
do
Candice.
this.
Yeah,
and Candice Little, of course. Yeah. So, yeah, props to him. Really cool. I don't know what. I guess he's going to be competitive with his team ownership now and do some other races, I guess. I don't know what he's going to do. You know, he hasn't quite announced exactly what his role is going to look like. We can only guess. So that was really cool to see. So props to him. He does listen to these, or he listens to some podcasts. I'll send him this link because he said he's coming on to do a tell-all end of season.
Yeah, we need
I might have to fly up there and play golf with him and have a few beers and have a like. I think he needs to loosen up and tell all. Like the sponsors he's going to talk about, he doesn't have to impress anymore, right? Fans, put it in the comments here if you want an exclusive Greg Minnaar retirement interview on this podcast. So put it in the comments. The more comments I get, the more I can show him.
You talked about betting. We run all sorts of bets. And this year I lost all 4 of my bets. I bet with TJ. I said that Gwyn would be top 10, and I was almost. And he was like,
he would have if it was dry. He would have. That was a fair
but
bet.
he's also one in the wet. So I would say Gwyn performed super good.
Can we talk about that one?
No, hang on. I'm talking about it. He just came like. That result is actually huge because I bet Gwyn was like, I don't know if I'm going to carry on with World Cups, but literally to show that he just come back off the back, and he's had his big injuries, but he's had his little injuries in the comeback from his big injury. So he's not as strong and fit as Gwyn was. You know, he was the strongest and the fittest. He's not that right now. But if he sees he can get 12th, just a couple of seconds off podium, it's like, yeah, he's going to have a good off season, and we will see him on the podium next year. It would be my other bet if anyone wants to take it. But anyway, so I'm happy to see that. I also bet stupidly that I was like, with TJ, another bet was like the fans will storm the finish line like they did last year with Jackson. And I was like, well, Jackson's not racing. And I was like, if Finn wins, they'll storm the finish line. But if Finn doesn't win, they're not going to storm the finish line. And then I took that bet. And I lost,
You lost that one huge. How's Rudy Cunningham's getting Troy out of there so quickly? That was very, very impressive. Or did he not keep him?
He did a better job.
Oh, you want him in there for the photos?
Yes. Well, he couldn't have stayed in there because of the fans, but he did a better job than the Army guy that tackled Jackson Goldstone last year and threw him with a neck armbar to the ground.
Oh, yeah, true.
Rory gently ushered Troy.
I saw the text. I think he preempted.
Well, they also
please get out there.
They also had a plan. There was a way to get the riders like from there into a little safe zone where last year there wasn't. Jackson was stuck in there, with them. So they definitely did plan that. But there's a couple of other things with finish bowl protocol that's not been good for the fans and for the media. Like we just lose all the last riders. There's no. We lose all the. You don't get any
emotion,
of the
emotion in the photography.
Yeah, not just the photography, for the fans, like once you're in the hot seat, like in polo, like it doesn't matter which venue, you're whisked away and you're never seen again, and you never get to take your bow, if you're not the last rider down and you get the win. And the fans want to, that's why they're there. That's why you're going to watch sports live, you want to see it and be there and feel it. But we can talk on some details if we don't run out of time at the end of this. But anyway,
we probably will. We've spoken about 3.5 riders. We haven't spoken about the women. But on Gwyn, I agree and I disagree. So Gwyn's quali and semi is so impressive. Like the speed at US Open, and when I saw him in the finish line after his race run, I could sense that he was disappointed, I think.
I mean, he obviously always expects more.
Yeah, so the speed to come back, but I'm thinking, but that race run action speed, that's, like you said, that's something that if you miss these races, that intensity, especially with 3 race runs in a year, you're doing a lot more racing. So for him to come back and be 7th, but I disagree. I think he's not that in touch with the bike and everything yet, with the confidence to lay down a wet run that fast. Yeah. If it was dry, I think he could have been even more up there. With the wet, he spoke about at Ludenville and stuff. I don't think he's quite there. You need the confidence.
No, he's got work to do.
You need the touch on the bike. So if it's wet, it's going to be hard for him to throw caution to the wind, as good as he could if it was dry. So, but I mean, 7th down Mont-Saint-Anne with the current crop of races. Like I guess we can be thankful. Hopefully that means he'll be at more World Cups next year.
Yeah. Hopefully Richie Rude will do more downhills next year.
Holy shit.
There was a lot of enduro guys and like, I'm so like kind of pissed off when they surprised when they do well. And it's like, it's Richie Rude. He's world fucking champion in downhill. And the way he rides his enduro bike, he's track speed guy. He's just strong, hungry, and he's a bloody good bike rider at the end of the day. I wouldn't say he's going to switch to downhill because I think his primary focus will still stay enduro. But it's you're a good bike rider. You're Martin Mays. You Richie Rude. You're just a good bike rider and a good racer. So super stoked.
But it is impressive when your focus is enduro and you're not got as much bike time and you don't have as much racecraft. I think it's not a surprise.
I would say he has more racecraft. Yeah,
but at that intensity speed. But I mean, just came off US Open. But man, I like Richie Rude can manhandle a. I mean, he's smooth, but he can also manhandle a bike. Like, like he's probably not getting tired on a. Well, he's not getting 3.5 minute run, not a 5-minute run anymore down Mont-Saint-Anne. He's just never getting tired. Yeah, that was cool to see more of him. That was pretty cool.
But
Matt Walker, what about that? That's unfortunate. I mean, that could have been the thing he needed. But I mean, the speed's there. I think for sponsors to look at Matt Walker, if you can win qualifying,
you hit the nail head. It's what he needed right now, and he has always had the technique. And I'm sure maybe he doesn't know what I won't say went wrong but going from winning the overall in 2020, like it's not like what did he change? But it doesn't matter about the last 2 or 3 years, I'm going to say, because he's just proved he was fastest on the dry and he would have been also like equally fast and confident in the wet. And he backed it up with the quali and the semi, he was 3 splits in, so he was going to be fastest guy like in both runs, which means
True.
he would have been,
Yeah. So the
favored for the
momentum
race.
would have been there.
Yeah, but timing wise, I think he's done enough to put himself back on the radar because there
Like
are
in the
quite a few
conversation.
teams. Yeah, there's quite a few teams that are like riders. There's holes and voids to be filled. There is less teams, so there's going to be a lot of riders left without a ride. A lot of good riders like a Matt Walker caliber, where they'd be like, "What do I do? Do I ride for nothing?
Like what
Do I do
happened
this?"
to Danny this year.
Exactly. Perfect case in point. And for Matt Walker to have, even though he didn't do the final, everyone's smart enough to know that he still has the hunger, the motivation, the speed, the talent. His kits look bloody sharp and good for photos, I've got to say. And I did remind him.
The rainbow kit.
I did remind him. I said, "Hey, Matt, you remember your best season ever?" He's like, yeah. I was like, "Do you remember what you were doing that off season?" And I was like, "Yep. He spent the whole season in South Africa. You did a ton of rides with him, and he was like fully lycra the whole time." And I was like, "Just get back to South Africa this off season. That's the magic ingredient."
Oh man, it's going to be an interesting off season. We've got so many more races next year. It's going to be interesting prepping for that. But Dakota Norton, the Sportsman Award goes to Dakota Norton. Did you see the footage? I can't even see if he missed the post or not.
I just saw him pushing pushing his bike up, and but that just speaks of his
character.
His character, exactly. And especially if that was, say, earlier eras, obviously there would be tape involved as well. But I wonder how many people would have stopped and pushed back up or thought like, did I go on the wrong side of the pole? He obviously knew he must have gone the wrong side of a pole.
Yeah, he must have known. Fair enough.
He must have known. And obviously these days...
It looked quite touch and go, but obviously from his vantage or rider's point of view, you know if you've gone off the track or not. Yeah. Most cases.
And this track wasn't covered 100% by video, like some of the World Cups we've had this year, where they literally, you can't like go out the pole because you've got eyes on you the whole time. And not any other rider, because a lot of people would have done what Dak done, pushed back up. But also pushing back up, he knows is not going to feature. He's going to get 30th anyway, or 29th or whatever. But his character, like it said, he's just like, I don't care. I'm a racer. I need to go back up and go around. And if I get stone last, it doesn't matter. But I probably wouldn't have pushed back up. I would have said, anyway.
Let's let the UCI figure this out, that they are there to do a job.
That's their job.
But that is sport. But that is sport. The sport at the highest level, like in F1 and all these things,
F1 guys would not have pushed back up. They would never have pushed back up.
They're on the grey edge all the time. They're interpreting the rules as best they can to get an advantage. And the rule
and there's sometimes marshals, like when poles get knocked out, especially in the heavy section.
We're not allowed to compare the sport to F1, eh? So
no, we're not.
Sorry,
but sometimes what happened to Dak, like sometimes poles get put back in the wrong spot. They're actually pretty on it. These last couple of years, there's guys that are literally lapping and making sure the poles are always in the same spot. But in the problem section of track, poles get knocked out, and marshal puts it back, and that hole doesn't work anymore. So then they put it somewhere else, and putting it 5 centimeters in a different place, that could be the Dak missing a pole. But I'm not saying that's what happened, but it's admirable of him to do that. And
it is. And I also want to say, yes, there's this monkey to get off his back. However, if you're always the guy in second,
let's not talk about it. It's not helping Dak.
This is going to help.
Okay.
I've said it about Rory McIlroy in golf. He's the guy that hasn't won a major now in 10 years, but he's on every leaderboard. He wins like the overall. He does all this stuff. And it's like the reason he's there is because he's so damn good. I know that doesn't help emotion, but to be there week in and week out on different courses and qualify second and go put yourself in that uncomfortable position, have at it. I have so much props for Dak and his character. Like in the US Open, I gave him a little tease like, hey, you mentioned in my pod, keep hiring youngsters. I'm going to keep beating them. Because he's got that motivation. He's got that dog. He's got that dog in him as well as this amazing character, right?
Yeah.
And he just didn't take the bait. He literally was like, dude, it's lucky. Like he just had so many good things to say about it.
Yeah.
He just didn't even speak about himself. The question was about him. He made it all about Lockie. So it was really impressive. So props to him. I think he can, keep his head up high. And it's because of the talent levels, because of the sheer speed to just always be there. I mean, it's a tough pill to swallow. I understand. Easier for me to say this, but props to him.
Yeah. I'm just sort of things when I'm trying to think back on a macro scale of the race. And when you watch the runs, like when you see the guys leaving that Stevie Smith rock roll, Stevie Smith hated that section, by the way. He lost 2 races in that section. He came to a stop before that rock roll twice. He would have preferred a different section of track to be named after him.
I didn't like that section. I died way less than Tebow died. I think Tebow, is that where he crashed on the right after the rock?
Yeah.
I think that
was savage.
Yeah, that section sucks. I don't like that section. I don't think it looks great on, I don't know, does it look good on TV?
No, dude, that's why the crowd was there.
Like that.
No, that's why the crowd was there. So obviously the guys were gapping the rock, landing on the wood, hitting the last year. The people were exploding in the berm, but it was more shape better and more moisture in the dirt. So the berm was holding people this year. Last year it was like hell out there. But the most impressive scene, and this is why all that crowd were there, because they see that section, and then to appreciate the speed that these guys are going, the track needs to be wide because they literally just flying and floating. And some guys are sending it 20 feet. Some guys are sending it 30 meters, 20 meters more. And the most impressive, there's a couple of guys that just scrubbed it like crazy down through there. But the most impressive, like Max Alleran, unbelievable.
He looked good over there, eh?
Just to watch him ride his bike. He has like such a special touch on yeah, it was just in the last couple of races, I think he's been quickest rider, and he's been quickest in quali at maybe I don't know. It's not the first time he's been quickest guy on track.
Aren't all the juniors on the overall podium first-year juniors?
This is the thing, hey. It's
insane.
It's the exact same thing that happened with Jackson and them. I wouldn't say they're like last year's juniors sucked, but it seems like you get them in these 2-year periods because like it's exact same. It's happened like 3 times now over 6 years. We've had this like 2 guys, or in this case, there's not 2 guys. It's more than just 2 guys, but And the funny thing is, at the beginning of the season, the end of last season, Thibaut and Guyton told me that this is from Commensal Makov, the brothers that run the team. They were excited, and I didn't know enough about French Cup racing, and they told me, man, you must see this guy Till. He's so fast, and they just tell me all about Till, and there's like and his other brother, they're twins, but Max, he's into free ride and like he's more style, but Till's the racer, and like. And look at this year. So actually, not to take it away from Till, he's finishing strong because he started the year with basically injured. He's been riding better, and he's like now I would say injury free. So he will find his pace as well. But the irony of the whole situation, Max, who won this race and is the overall series winner, he was what the Ruffin brothers thought was the chill free ride twin and not the fast racer twin, which goes to show that when it comes to racing, it's not even about how your style of riding and racing your bike. It's your mental game. And he's relaxed. He's one of those guys that if he's having fun on the bike, he's going fast, and they feel he's getting off the bike. So it's just super interesting, the whole sports psychology of that situation of those twins, and now seeing them both go 1 and 2 like that. That's got to be the best way
the younger
to be
twin?
in that family.
Who's the younger twin?
I don't know.
Often the younger brother starts beating the older brother because he's forced to keep up, and he has this fight attitude.
Yeah, but that doesn't probably apply to twins, bro. Sure.
I don't know. I'll look. Well, if anyone's a sports psychologist, and they know some data,
maybe in
saying it different to how I should, because I'm hanging out with other nationalities. Yeah, we should look into that.
But anyway,
who's the most underrated rider of the year? Do you think Marine Cabaru could come like as the most under the radar, underrated rider? She won 2 World Cups. I'm like, come on.
Yeah, but she's not underrated.
Not underrated. She's not underrated, but she just like slips under the radar and then pops off 2 World Cup wins in the season. Like,
yeah, but
she's not underrated.
She's just a rate. I don't want to say like because she has tons of personality and she's happy
Yeah.
and fun to be around, but it's like she's just focuses on her racing and and different. Yeah, she's just gets the job done, and then and it's also because midway through last year she was riding injured half the year, and it's like how Tani and Pom Pom like are now riding at their peak. Well, Tani got hurt on her hand again. Miriam's also finding her true pace and speed and stuff, and she's always just there. And if any of the others are going to have the others don't have to have a bad run for her to win. Sorry, but
No,
yeah,
but I think
I would say under the radar. It's like no one called Troy for the win,
no, but you've said a
but
good
he
thing is
shouldn't.
because the other riders are back at it. There's more conversation. Tani's back. Miriam
got big video and they
reel
got
off a
big-
win. You're like, there's so many people to speak about, and then it's like, oh shit, add Marine, and then she knocks
Yeah.
off 2 wins. Like legit wins.
Yeah,
So that was pretty cool and took second in the overall. I just think like her clinical riding, it's like it does sometimes go a little unnoticed. It's like,
Yeah.
holy shit, the way you rode down that track took the win in those conditions,
I remember when the team rebranded and launched as the current team, and it was like Brendan was a headline rider with Marine, and they did a cool video shoot. I remember then thinking that this one step down, like there was like a scrub, and it was like a pretty sizey, fast step down, legit more like free ride down the track. And I was like, for sure that was Brendan. And I was like, yeah, no, it wasn't. It wasn't Troy Lee. It was Marine. And that was the first time. And then already she had wins and podiums, but that was the first time I was like, holy shit, she can throw a bike around like the best of them. So yeah. And to talk about throwing bikes around, Jesus, we are jumping around, or I'm jumping around. Like one of the best whips in the game, and it's also like how Vale outwhips most of the guys at Fort William. You got Eris doing the double, getting the rainbow jersey, and then the overall and the race win in the final race of the year. So cool to see in the
should have seen a whip at US Open.
This is what yes.
I missed the Crankworks one. Someone wanted to show me the Instagram version. I was like, holy hell. Is she going up to Elite next year?
Yeah. So you got her, and that's also the same, the girls we've had last year, actually. Yeah. It's just, there's talent in both men's and women's and juniors. It just keeps coming through. And both her and, she's going to be like first few. She's had a couple of times this year where she would have had podium times or fastest time, but that was under different track conditions and racing conditions. But it'll be cool. There'll be 15 women qualifying next year, which will be great, especially for all these up and comers. But I wouldn't be surprised if she gets her first elite podium next year as well.
Yeah, and speaking of first elite podium, Gracie. So now she's the one everyone speaks about: style, potential, speed, and now she's delivered on home soil. I mean, that's going to be great for confidence,
Well,
so
confidence.
That's
she was
pretty amazing.
What the biggest surprise about Gracie, that this was just her only final she raced in. So,
fair enough.
when you're not one of those 3 protected riders, it's like you're riding on this edge, and then the men at least have 30 spots to go for, But like, to not crash, and so many of the races have had the race day conditions have just turned to shit, really. So you're riding that fine line, and it just must be mental too. You want to qualify, but when the woman, like, how do you figure out what's safe? 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. Like 10th, 11th is like, there's no.
Well, Miriam got it wrong twice as well. Or once,
exactly.
Once because of pace and maybe a mistake the other time. Yeah,
So
that's a really good point.
And with Gracie, we've seen. I'm not a coach, and I don't know what I'm talking about half the time. But because she's so good, we've seen how good her depth is, especially like doing what she did at Hardline Tasmania this year. And now you do see she does have the speed that she can get on the podium, like she has done now, and not just podium, second place. She always had the skill and the speed. And this is how I hope Greg's role, and he stays with the team. She just needs to learn how to be a racer, I didn't think Jackson would be such a good racer when he was first year junior, because I thought he was just a free ride yo from Whistler and they wouldn't know how to race. she just needs to figure out what Jackson and Finn and those guys have done in that Whistler environment or in the Canadian West Coast environment, how to become good racers. Because she's been so good at free riding, she maybe hasn't had to push her speed so much, and she's still so young. And now she's had a taste of it. I think, yeah, we definitely will see her in more than one final and more than one podium. Well, geez, I can't. It's just so tough. But I think now is truly the beginning of a World Cup racing career. It was just surprising that this was the first final. She made it click for her.
No, it is surprising, but as you said, when there's only 10 berths, it really can, you can get on the wrong side of it, on the wrong
Way too
side of
easy.
momentum, yeah. And then you're sort of overthinking it and really like battling with like pushing too hard and having another crash and missing on finals. Like it can really weigh on you, and it may have been weighing on her, but she's got the backing of Greg, and that's so much experience. And it can take time. It can take people longer to find their racecraft, right? Because
Yeah,
speaking of a coach and a psychologist, everyone is so different. What
yeah,
works for Greg is not always going to work for Gracie. It's about them really, and they've got Alan Mulway there as well, who's really good
yeah.
at looking at the individual riders. So, yeah, the future is certainly bright. We're not allowed to speak about the proposed changes, but hypothetically, there could be 15 in the final. Not going to talk if there is or isn't because it's all hypothetical. I wasn't meant to see any document, even though it's
Yeah.
online. I never saw it. So we have that. Shucks. So spoken about
And
Valley,
then,
Phoebe on the podium again, and
yeah,
Millie. So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, and next year is going to be really exciting in the ladies' category. Holy cow! Who have we missed
yeah.
out on the men, like story wise,
Well, just on Phoebe and
race
Millie, like
wise?
Phoebe is so strong and she's always in such a good mood and she's so tough and she's had a couple of podiums now and she's just such a strong workhorse and her and Tana get on real well together. But Millie, this year she's flying, man. I've called her for a podium a couple of times this year, and she's just had massive crashes in like the last day of training or race day morning, and I don't know how. And Phoebe as well. Actually, come to think of it, like there's most of the men's field would like not continue racing or riding the rest of the weekend for some of the crashes I've seen Millie and them take, and yeah, so it's just a matter of especially with Millie, just polishing off this current speed she has because she's riding like super good right now, and I'm glad she was rewarded with a podium because the race day was super sketchy conditions. But yeah, so happy to see that. And then you said like the men like Remy Tiron, he just if you look at all the races where he's podium, look at the sectors that he wins, and he does win sectors because he's untouchable. If the tracks were like the hardest bits of Poland or Ludenville or Mont-Saint-Anne or in the wet, or like you take the hardest bits of every track and you make like a super track that's like 4 minutes long, like I think he'd have a couple of second margins on people because he literally wins the hardest sections of track. It's unbelievable. And when I woke up and actually when I was watching first practice day, I was like, out of everyone here, who's going to who's going to benefit from today's conditions? And I was like, Bernard's going to love it, Finn's going to love it, and Remy's going to love it. And I call those three for like podium for sure because I know how they get motivated when they wake up, and everyone else is like, I wish it was like yesterday. And none of them, if they could choose, they would all choose to race in the drive, but they all will race maybe potential for a better result in the wet, or just because when it gets sketchy, they just that good at riding bikes. Really, was what it comes down to, and then they feel confident in it.
You got to add Benoit to that list when the
Yeah.
conditions look
Well,
shit.
and he's just like actually Benoit's he's an all conditions rider now. He's just crazy.
Yeah, that run
And
was when the race came alive. You're like, oh my goodness, we have kind of lost the track. Maybe it's slower, but if
but
you're
it's happened.
committed
Yeah.
and if you can carry the speed, some of the sections are going to be less slippery when you get them right, and that's what he showed, and that's what Troy showed. I mean, he kept dries on, and he just said, "I'm going to ride it like it's dry," and it paid off. He barely made a mistake. He basically nosedived the one step down coming out of the rock section, but that's kind of because he was carrying so much speed that he sort of pushed through it. He didn't have to
Mm.
hop that high. that was really the only mistake we could visually see from Troy and Benoit as well. Like there wasn't really much that was wrong there. And as you've said, you've mentioned a Richie Rude. He's in the top 10 here. So you've mentioned that. You've mentioned Bernard Kerr.
I mean,
Yeah, what?
Laurie's such a
Oh,
happy
yeah, we do
ending
have
to his
to
two year long
shit
saga.
show of the health. I spoke to him in US Open. He
I
sounded like so
he knew he
positive and
was
not
getting,
like
because he knew
bummed
he
about
because
the
he
last
felt
2 years.
well. Because the reason is he's in such a good place because he feels better. Like it's such a he's had to do so many different things to get to where he is now, and he's not even at the point where he wants to be. But he feels so much better on a, let's talk about on an energy level, and the energy level is affecting so many other things. It's affecting his vision on the track. It's affecting like his recovery or on mid race week or mid race day, and not being able to perform. And there's such a seeing him in the very first section of the woods, the men's first run training, second run training. I was in the first woods, and it was one of those things like you can't in a lot of sections you can't. Everyone looks fast at the at this level of sport, but then Laurie came through, and I was like, oh my god, this is another level, Laurie, and I'm happy his health is returning, and not surprised after seeing that first, just where he hit one turn. Not surprised to see him on the podium. It's weird how one turn can say it all. And you remember that? Remember, Laurie used to have like those odd memes when he was sprinting the motorway at Fort William, like that little choppy head wiggle shake. I saw that on the live feed. I just looked and I saw him like mid run doing that, and I was like, we haven't seen that for like over a year. We have not seen that Laurie's pedal style because he didn't have the energy to throw down the power and get those little quick sprints up. And then I kind of didn't even need to look at the screen or the splits because I was like, okay, I pretty much knew he was going to do it, and that's after the 1.5 years that he's kind of gone through this. I could it's just so nice that he can end on a positive note. This to go into the off season is what I'm talking about. And the podium is just sort of the icing on the cake. But to go knowing that I'm still competitive next year, I'm back racing for wins and contributing and having fun. And it just makes the off season so much better if you get a little bit of fire and motivation. And yeah, there's like just to finish strong. And then even if you don't finish strong like Pom Pom, she the day before she had the two fastest times, and from how she started the season, not qualifying, thinking she was going to for sure not race next year because she couldn't see that she could possibly get better, and like Tanya as well, and now both of them are like fighting for wins, and like it's just going to re-motivate them for next year. So we're on for another smoker next year. Asa will be back healthy and battling with the twins and Tyler from the Kiwis. Yeah, just awesome.
No, it is epic, and props to Laurie, like his attitude towards it. Now, I guess having answers and know that you've got light at the end of the tunnel will put you in a better mood. It must have been really tough for him to. So, I mean, what we do know is 10 rounds next year, which is maybe one topic. But before we just maybe softly break that down, what would be like a highlight? Something that comes to mind is seeing Amaury's Val de Sol run again. Just seeing Amaury back there and the way he delivered. I mean, there are many highlights, but that just springs to mind. I'm like, think back to the year, which I can barely remember anything, but I'm like, my goodness, that Amaury run was insane.
He would have looked. Unfortunately, we kind of lost. He would have looked great out there when those conditions changed, and it would have been interesting to see what he would have done. But we can just speculate. So yeah, he was bummed. Like early on, he still did a run on the first training day after he hit the tree. He sat out like a couple of runs in the second session. He went for one and he looked super fast and good but I was just by the step down, so he was obviously smooth in the air. But after that run, he was like, "I'll try tomorrow. This is a quality day," and it just didn't happen. And broken metacarpal, and sometimes if it's up here, you can race. If it's on the sort of on your digits of your finger, but as soon as it's the one in the hand, and on this track,
like this, can you see the lack of knuckle there?
Yeah,
Depends where it is. You can
think
race on
most.
it and you can tape it to the bar,
I'm
but
gonna. I'm
sometimes you
gonna.
can't.
I'm going to say most, if you're not a proper downhiller or enduro racer, if you don't have some surgery scars or crooked knuckles on there, like for sure, we've all had that boxer's fracture hitting trees
Yeah,
and stuff.
and some came from racing and some came from in the after
From
party.
after parties, yeah.
Did you get dragged to the after party?
No, I wish. I
Matt,
wish. I
Matt went.
mostly wish. I mostly wish because it was Greg's like send off, like. But I'll see Greg again. So it's just I got to sleep at 4 a.m. after doing all the work. You have the
It's
overall
insane.
podiums, and there's a hiccup, and I've got to say one thing. They do so many things right, but then we showed up this year. This is actually like it doesn't shouldn't even I shouldn't don't even need to talk about it because it doesn't affect the fans. But the two media zones they had taped off for the media. One was behind the hot seat, couldn't see the track for the media. What the fuck? The other was off to the side near the podium, but the big finish arch or the finish pole, the digital screen, covered the two step downs on the finish straight, which is kind of what you're there to. That's what you do
Where was
in
the
the
where was the
finals.
VIP? Because you always sneak into the VIP to shoot though.
I don't sneak into the VIP. I'm smart, and I realize they screw us over with actual media zones that we should have to be able to do our jobs properly. No, I work for the organizer at this event as well, so
Oh,
we have
cool.
a quick access. I just said in this case, I just set a remote up there and let that do the wide crowd shot.
Yeah.
And anyway, you know what? It doesn't really matter about the media zones there because really the story of Mont-Saint-Anne, there's so much to shoot on that final straightaway. Kind of like how Fort William used to be when the crowd was closer to the track and there was a bigger bowl and less infrastructure. You can shoot like 10 different shots from 10 different angles with 10 different lenses. It's such a great finish area to shoot and it was such a great way to end to end the World Cup downhill season. Like they've done a phenomenal job getting record spectators. It's just like you feel so happy that the sport is we have the racing, we have in the racing, the weather, like so many people, I would have thought, that weather, no one's going to turn up. That crowd, man, that was just something else. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And there's one of the marshals, like the nicest guy, I think his name's Alan. He's like 70 something. He looked like younger and fitter than Boris and I. Definitely had way more energy than Boris and I. And he was like at the final marshal point where all the crowd is by the Red Bull step down. And he was amping them up and he's wearing a Misspent Summers t-shirt and he's getting signatures. And it's like pretty cool how the sport of downhill attracts people from all walks of life. I mean, even cross country is doing the same. The diversity of spectators is pretty cool, and it makes me happy and proud that we part of such a cool scene.
No, it is. I mean, it's thriving, and I mean, I came off the U.S. Open. Was thinking of going to Mont-Saint-Anne probably next year. I could do both, and it's amazing to see the core fans there on the northeast of America and Canada, and just the knowledge of them, and like the
Yeah.
energy. It is really cool racing in North America. It really is, and it must happen.
Andrew, I've got to remind your audience, you won the US Open. You beat Sam Hill and G. Atherton and Nathan Rennie. It's like you beat the best at the peak and you won the US Open. Did you win 15 grand? I don't think you did.
No, but I think in inflationary terms, it could
Was
be
it
quite
5 or
similar.
10? What did
It
you
was
win?
seven and a half grand. It was the biggest prize purse at the time. Oh no, Villigan was bigger, but I don't think it was in that year.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 7.5 grand, and no, obviously I'm biased, but it's sometimes those are the races you need to like spur on your career, and I won that before the World Cup podiums, even though I'd be knocking on the door. So when I saw
Yeah.
Lockie do that, I was like, dude, this is going to open doors now. If you can see that
And
you
it,
can beat these guys, there's a World
and
Cup
it did.
contingent is here, and
Yeah.
it really did. So it's cool to see North American racing alive and kicking. I think that's going to make everyone lift their game. Another series. I think it's really cool.
I mean,
Another highlight was probably
just,
Loris Vergier. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I just think
No, carry
we
on.
mustn't forget to mention like Loris Vergier he's the guy in every damn pre-show, the guy with the potential, the guy with the ungodly skill. It's going to be his year. He's going to take the overall.
I didn't see
And
his
that
run.
guy
What
goes
happened?
and wins the world championship over Loic Bruni and Andorra, fairy tale stuff. That also just springs to mind,
Yeah.
And there were lots. I'm going to forget some.
What happened in his race run? Because I wasn't in a place to see a screen during Loris's run.
I just think I'd have to bring it up. But you think about a highlight for you while I look up.
Are you talking about from Mont-Saint-Anne?
No, just like as we wrap up the season.
Oh, it's just like I said. It's just finishing on such a high note with the sport, the crowds, and everything. It's just. There's like I said, there's some things that are for another podcast, but like the tracks are getting faster and tighter, but taking away some of that technical nature of the track's not great for all riders, And then the only down you asked for my highlight, and I'm thinking like a low light, like these speeds these speeds just worry about the safety of these riders. These speeds, the injuries, like just blew it. Like just a big injury. If even Lou, like, you have a normal crash in a slow tech section, you're going to like keep riding out of it. But you get tossed going like 60k an hour, you're not getting up.
We are asking,
but it looks so good, it looks so good.
We are asking more questions of the riders. We are asking them to go faster more consistently, I guess, if you shorten some of the tracks. But I know they're working on it. They've just got to. You can go fast and keep it safe. But that is a challenge to the course builders and something for them to be aware of for sure.
Yeah.
But I've got a bit of housekeeping to do.
Course builders did an amazing. Course builders did an amazing job here, and I we saw what happened and what should have happened at like Ludenville and how they dropped the ball on some of the decisions they made there in regards to track and not maintenance and too little too late, or things that slipping through the cracks. Hopefully we get less of slipping through the cracks things, and we get like. You remember when that Phil Saxon, he was like a dedicated guy. He used to come build the 4-cross tracks. We need a dedicated. We need the dedicated guy that knows what he's doing. Like how it showed that this crew knew how to sculpt a racetrack, and they made all the changes they made were positive. Too often, like a venue just makes a change or puts in a wood section, but it's not done like by a top level rider. That's part of the dig or the work crew. But it'd be good to have like someone that can just put the cherry and the icing on top of all these great World Cup tracks we have, and just make them truly amazing to, you have a lip, just shape it or angle it or make the land, so that people can, so that it looks good and it rides good and fun to ride and safe to ride.
Safer and potentially safer.
Speeds. Because it's very different going like 20k at a lip and going 30k at a lip, and it takes a special skilled trail builder to cater to the World Cup guys.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I guess it's just more resources. If we can get more resources in there, you can add those sort of layers. Bit of housekeeping.
Was there some overalls that we spoke about the individual results this weekend, and then Anna Newkirk, we forgot to speak about her. She was
what a season!
Flying.
Holy shit!
And man, like I also, like I said, I didn't see what happened in a race run, but semi and qualies, like she's going to be just another, like there's going to be like 8 girls battling for the podium. There used to be 3, 4, 5 if they're all healthy, but there's way more than 5 battling for the podium now.
Yeah, she crashed. I mean, I made note, like I had a note as a crash and then a breakout season, because I mean, she's going so quick. And as well as Louise, like coming off a really good US Open result, you can see, like Lockie, you can see the confidence. We're like, okay, but I've just beat the people on a downhill course. These are the World Cup people. They're not trying to go slow out here. So that just helps you you need to sometimes see it, depending on the rider and their confidence level. You need to see the results before you can get some more, So, yeah, it was a really cool season. I think props to all the races, the organizers as well. Like, yes, we've been open to giving some feedback. We've been there a long time. We come from a good place. They're doing great stuff as well. Like we've been asking for more rounds for 20 years. The industry goes in a slump. They managed to deliver more rounds. So be careful what you wish for in life, because eventually it's going to come. So we got more rounds next year, which is epic.
I'm happy. I'm curious.
Review podcast. I don't know if I'm going to afford Sven Martin's day rate / beer fee here, getting him on
day
more
rate.
times.
Day rate. just like for the union represent, I donate my time to this podcast.
And
George
we are
gives me
appreciative.
Crank Brothers give me some pedals and shoes every now and then. But that's not why I do this. I love the sport. I'm curious to see another race in Italy next year at La Tuile. Like, we've raced some amazing enduro. The terrain is super nice. And the hill that I think they're building the track on is like really going to be really steep. They can have a lead in, like a mellower, fast lead in. But then once they get into the final hill under the gondola, it's going to be, I think they said they've got like a 13-person strong team that's already been digging for a couple of months. So they're doing the work before winter, which is so important, which is really good. And they've got heaps of time to keep digging. But the fact that they're starting now, is really good. A couple of new rounds, which is...
And Lake Placid in America, I had some guys that told me, obviously,
everyone said
World Cup skiing and stuff, but I don't know what hill they're going to use. So
Whiteface. Whiteface. Apparently, it's super good, steep. Not as mellow as the US Open course. It's 20 minutes away from the cross country venue. It'll be a little bit logistical struggle for the brands and teams like the ones that like Fox and RockShox that will have to have dual setups, kind of like they did in Andorra. Accommodation will be tricky, all that. But new venues is what we have been wanting, so I'm super stoked to see that. It's lovely to celebrate. Like, I wish people needed this information a lot earlier than we're getting it this week. But I'm glad to get it anyway.
Well, if I can do a bit of housekeeping, I'm sure Sven will interrupt at some point, but this podcast is only possible because of Crank Brothers. They're synonymous with downhill racing, and they gave away a shoe and pedal combo. We said we're going to give it to one of our YouTube subscribers, and at Tahoe e-bikes, if I've got that right, you are the winner. So if you are, listening or watching on YouTube, because you're prevalent in the comments, thanks so much for the support. Send me a direct message. I'll try reach out to you. I've never reached out via YouTube. Don't know if it works or not. Hit me up on Instagram, and we'll get you set up with those Crank Brothers shoes and pedals. George, if you're listening, send Sven another pair, and Alan Milway, Win Masters, Eric Carter. I forget who else came on, but you guys are legends for donating your time to just coming on, having a yarn, as the New Zealanders say, about racing. What an epic season. And I think the biggest thanks you can do, follow Sven on Instagram at Sven Martin Photo, reshare some of his photos. He loves having more Instagram followers in some of the races.
I don't have time to even populate my Instagram, but I will now in this off season.
Yeah, but when you have a time away from the family and stuff, and Sven puts up sometimes some sort of blast from the past race and pictures, and otherwise go to Misspent Summers, where a lot of Sven's content is now. And thanks to them, you're also going to hear the audio interviews that Sven did. So don't stop the podcast. It's coming right up. So
can I tell me when you're finished?
You may interject. My housekeeping could go on all day. Please do.
Yeah. Talking about Crank Brothers and Misspent Summers and George, who's the one that takes care of all the athletes at Crank Brothers, does pay pretty much my favorite content from the week.
Oh, the B Zone.
The B Zone bullet points. And when you're there, like, it's all these things that's happening and subliminally happening, but the fact that someone's actually stopping to think, but they're putting all the left field sort of things that aren't obvious. And so George Score-Brown,
they're very creative. Like, he says it, you're like, yes, but the way he says it, you're like,
it's
genius. That is exactly what happens in a B Zone, or what you overheard, or...
it's one of the best things to come out of the coverage from the World Cups as well.
But that is another thank you to Crank Brothers, because they are so passionate. So he's got a lot of other things to do, but he's so passionate about racing. They're passionate about it. So if it wasn't for them, these reviews wouldn't come so thick and fast. So make sure you go over to Crank Brothers. They also have a discount code, Moving the Needle, when you check out there. So they were so thankful to you listeners. So if you do need a new pair of pedals or shoes, go hit them up. And I think the biggest thanks you can do, if you're not subscribed, please hit the YouTube, subscribe, and share it with a friend. That's all we want, is if this is going to give you value or entertainment, hopefully not get us in trouble if the F-bomb was said, share it with a friend. And Sven, sadly, the review episodes for the year are done.
Done. Who, I guess something your listeners should pop in. Who haven't they heard from in the last 2 or 3 years of your podcast that we got 7 months of off season, which is ridiculous they need to pop in there who they want to hear, or maybe you got some teasers of who you got in the can, who's coming up. But maybe we will have when we'll discuss the rules and talk about some of the team changes and what's been spotted on Instagram stories.
No, I appreciate that, Sven. We've got Lucas Shaw's coming up. We have Clay Harper from the US Open, so you can understand like everything that goes into another race series. I mean, we're downhillers at heart. I've got Anton Thielander is a really good episode, who's a guy that was at the top of the freeride world, suffered a lot with identity crisis, depression even when he retired at 24, I think. We might chat about Rampage. I don't want to put that out too soon. I mean, I'll try. But I've got quite a few in the can, some coming up, and I'd love to hear your dream guests. I have my dream guests, but pop them in the comments if you're on YouTube.
Steve Pete.
Put it in the comments. I hung out with Steve Pete a lot. Sven, do you know that I followed him down in his race run at US Open? I haven't dropped the content yet.
Andrew, please tell me. Please tell me if you followed Steve. Please tell me you fixed your bloody GoPro angle up. Please tell me you tilted it up. Please tell me. You should have just deleted. You should have deleted that Lucas Shaw video and just gone and done another run. No, I don't want to hear excuses. You're too pro to get that wrong.
A few things. The other angle, for the first time in history, the card failed after 16 seconds. Okay, so we had a backup. I am very respectful of people's time. Luca didn't want to go up and do another run. He didn't want to go up and do another run.
So did you fix it for Steve? Did you fix it for Steve?
And I didn't heckle him. I respected Steve Pete's race run.
Did you keep up with him on his race run?
Oh, Sven, that's so disrespectful. No, I was just as worried as you. That question entered my mind. So I decided to follow the free riders down. You saw the free ride run. So I decided to follow Nikolai Rogatkin down in the free ride class, knowing that I could keep up with Nikolai. Cool.
Yeah.
Then we get to the top, and Nikolai says he didn't reply to my text, but he replies to other things. I'm like, maybe he doesn't want me to follow him. I get to the top. He says, dude, problem is we're all going to stop in the second turn and go down together. I was like, that's not a problem. I'll just follow. This is great content. So I haven't released that on YouTube yet. We'll do that with US Open. So we all stopped. We put the slowest free rider in the front. I went to the back.
That's the best.
We raced. I made it all the way to the front within 3 minutes.
Really? Oh, so you just passes.
We all passed. It was great. Then I decided to follow Steve Pete, and then it hit me. I haven't raced.
Is this race run?
Yeah.
Is this his race run? So he's cool. He's dropping in behind him.
He had to be because he got added to the field. You do know that he qualified.
He was 81st. Yes. I did wonder about that. So you were number 82.
So, I didn't have a timing chip.
No, I know.
I was just a filmer. But I said to the organizer, like, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to follow Pete. It's a content run. You haven't added him to the race. He just happens to have a timing chip. Yeah. I was a little worried because then we went up for practice. And I was like, I'm pretty good for a minute on this track. But if Steve really has a go and I'm behind him, I can't see. And he's going to be competitive. Like there's rocks, roots. If I make a mistake, I'm going to lose him and look like an idiot. But I was like, well, what have I got to lose? Hope I don't crash and hopefully I stay with him. He was only 2 seconds quicker than Nina. I'm just going to put that out there. I know he's 50 years old, but that shows you the sheer speed that's going on in the ladies' field. There were sections where I don't think I wanted to go much quicker. I thought Petey was having a good go. I mean, he might have only got the information after staying at the bar a little long the night before.
What information?
That he was in the race. So win or lose, you're on the booze. PD had lost, hadn't qualified, drowning his sorrows in the bar. Weekend done. Wakes up to a text that he's in the race the next day. So
and you following him. And you following him.
But hit him up in the comments. I think he's got some exciting information about I don't want to say it but I think it's on his Instagram. He's got a really cool project that's coming out about his life. I'm just going to put it there. It is public knowledge, right?
I don't know.
Well,
no, he did. I swear. I think he did. He put the cover up. Yeah. He did pre-orders.
I'm giving him free promotion. You asked PD to come on the podcast, Sven.
I have. He will at some point, but he's not going to make it easy for you.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this was your Crank Brothers race review. Sadly, that's the last one. But as Sven said, we've got a big off season. Sven comes to visit in South Africa. There's a bit more of a home studio going on. Steve Pete, Forged by Speed. I don't care if he doesn't come on the podcast. I want to read the book. We should all read the book. I heard some of the stories in the book. It's going to be epic. We'll try get him on. I can only try,
Oh no, he has to come on because he has to do like a book tour, when they go and promote their things. Yeah, so he has a reason to come on. We just won't ask him about the book. Yeah, there we go.
All right, we've done it. We've done enough. You guys know what podcast this is. You know what to do. Till the next one. Peace.
Cheers.